There used to be a beloved process attached to buying a new game. You walked into a shop, picked up the case, turned it over, read the description, and if you were like me, you studied the screenshots and admired the artwork. You carried it home like you were bringing back a precious piece of another world. Years later, that same case might still be sitting on your shelf. Scratched, perhaps faded, and maybe even missing the manual, but most importantly, it was still there. You could lend it, trade it, sell it, even give it away, or place it into an old console, and get to rediscover that world that you loved so much and perhaps forgotten, enjoying that experience all over again. And sadly, that gaming experience now has an expiry date on PlayStation, and it is the topic of this video. Sony has confirmed that from January 2028, physical disc production will end for every new game released on PlayStation consoles. Games already released, along with games launching before that deadline, are unaffected. After it, new releases will be sold digitally through the PlayStation Store and through retailers in digital form. I mean, there has to be a lawsuit here waiting to happen because they're literally funneling business through the PlayStation Store and their supposed retailers while preventing people from buying copies from other outlets, including physical copies from stores like Amazon and eBay. And while to Sony this announcement must have seemed like a great business decision, they are effectively supporting the economic state of the world we live in today.
You will own nothing and be happy.
You bought something with money. God, I love money so much, Morty.
Are you being sarcastic?
Merchandise, Morty. Your only purpose in life is to buy and consume merchandise, and you did it. You went into a store, an actual honest-to-God store, and you bought something. You didn't ask questions or raise ethical complaints. You just looked straight into the bleeding jaws of capitalism and said, "Yes, Daddy, please." And I'm so proud of you.
And the uncomfortable part is that Sony can defend this decision with a very simple argument from their perspective at least. Most players have already chosen digital. Digital downloads accounted for around 80% of PlayStation's full game sales during Sony's 2025 financial year. Now, for millions of people, the convenience is obvious, right? A game can be bought at midnight, downloaded without leaving the house, switched without changing any disc, and carried across a console through an account. Publishers no longer need to manufacture millions of boxes, ship them around the world, predict retail demand, or compete for limited shelf spaces. Smaller developers like myself can reach an international audience without printing a single copy. I understand the appeal because I live inside that world too. As an indie developer, digital distribution is one of the reasons small teams can compete at all. A developer working from a bedroom can release a game worldwide without negotiating with distributors or convincing a chain of shops to stock it. And no one's doubting that digital delivery has solved real problems. Sony's decision follows years of players voting with their wallets. However, the real concern begins when a preference becomes the only permitted option, because convenience and ownership are very different things. I understand that a physical disc never gave you ownership of the game's copyright. Modern discs today can also depend on patches, downloads, and online authentication. Games can arrive incomplete, and in fact that is becoming the norm in the modern AAA era, while others become unusable when their online services close. That beautiful circle of plastic wasn't perfect, but it did however give the player a separate copy with practical powers attached to it. And I'll let the former good president and CEO of Sony, Jack Tretton, tell you exactly what those powers were.
For instance, PlayStation 4 won't impose any new restrictions on the use of PS4 gamers. When a gamer buys a PS4 disc, they have the rights to use that copy of the game. They can trade in the game at retail, sell it to another person, lend it to a friend, or keep it forever.
What happened to you, Dylan? You used to be somebody I could trust. I woke up. Why don't you?
I remember the days I would sell a ton of used games and those funds would go towards the next generation console, and in my case that was the PlayStation 3. Sony is basically, in a way, stealing our funds, because when we purchase a game, we're purchasing a form of asset, and in this case the asset is a video game, and when we finish playing that game we had the ability to sell it on to get more money to go towards maybe another game or another console. And over the years, Sony and the AAA industry has been trying to take that right away from us. They are literally trying to move funds from our accounts into theirs. Additionally, they're trying to kill the collector's market. If a game disappeared from a digital storefront, the copy sitting on your shelf remained outside that decision. A digital purchase works differently. Sony's own terms state that buying content from the PlayStation Store gives you a personal license. That license is generally non-transferable. PlayStation describes digital content as being licensed on a revocable basis, and the terms explicitly state that the buyer does not own the product. Closing or deleting an account may also result in the loss of access to purchased content. Basically, they're trying to turn the gaming industry into a subscription service while also selling us a separate subscription service.
Surprise, motherfucker!
How crazy is that when you process it? These people need to be sued and brought to court. I'm not even joking here. Now most people, and I'm guilty here too, never read those terms. When we buy a game, the transaction feels permanent. Money leaves your account and the game appears in your library. The scary reality is that your digital library is effectively a list of permissions recorded in someone else's system, that someone being Sony. And from 2028 onwards, every new PlayStation release will live inside that arrangement. Now, if we take a deeper dive into the economics of the old physical market, when the disc disappears, several choices disappear with it. You cannot sell a completed digital game to fund the next one. You can't lend your license to a friend for a weekend. A rare title can't continue circulating through secondhand shops after the publisher loses interest in selling it. Whatever form Sony's promised digital sales through retailers eventually take, access will remain connected to an account and governed by platform rules. Sony's current terms prohibit the resale, transfer, and lending of digital PlayStation content except where local law requires otherwise. That also changes the way prices behave. Physical games compete across supermarkets, independent retailers, specialist shops, online sellers, and the used market. Boxes occupy real space and old stock eventually has to move on. A second-hand copy also places pressure on the price of the new one. Digital stores can run excellent sales, but the platform controls the shop, the account system, and the delivery mechanism. Once the disc vanishes, the independent fallback vanishes with it. A collection changes too. For example, a physical shelf tells a story without requiring a password. Someone can inherit it, a friend can borrow from it, and a charity shop can resell it. A parent clearing an attic can discover that an old game still has value, and they may want to pass it on to their children. With the new system, that is all sadly gone. What's more is that an account has passwords, regions, and identity checks. The library can contain thousands of euros worth of games, yet passing it to another person is significantly more complicated than handing over a big box. Try doing it on a Switch, it's a freaking nightmare. And you just know Nintendo has done that on purpose. It just shows that the whole gaming industry is trying to push you and funnel you down that digital wormhole. And to that I say,
no way. Not this time. It's false. No way.
Not gonna happen! No, not gonna happen!
the timing of Sony's announcement makes the preservation question impossible to ignore. On the same day Sony revealed the 2028 deadline for physical discs, it also announced that the PlayStation Store on PS3 and PlayStation Vita would close globally in July 2027, following earlier PS3 closures in selected regions. Once those stores close, owners will no longer be able to make new purchases on those systems. Sony says previously purchased content will remain downloadable for the foreseeable future. For the foreseeable future offers me absolutely no comfort, and that wording gives them the flexibility to change the T's and C's in the future. The lifespan of the library still rests on future hardware, future account systems, and future security standards. We have already seen an earlier version of this story. In 2021, Sony planned to end purchasing support on PS3 and Vita, but reversed the decision following player backlash, which I'm praying to God happens again. Jim Ryan openly acknowledged that Sony had made the wrong decision and recognized how strongly players cared about maintaining access to classical games. And we know Xbox tried this in the past and Sony jumped on the opportunity to punch him in the gut. But sadly, that's when all the big decisions were not coming out of the Western market. Fast forward to today, and that reprieve has an end date. Now, I understand that no company can support every storefront forever. Payment systems change and hardware ages. Security standards move on, and maintaining old infrastructure costs a lot of money. All of that is understandable. However, the consequences remain exactly the same. Once the store closes, every game that never received a physical release, modern port, or re-release becomes harder to obtain legally. The historical record is already in terrible condition. A major study by the Video Game History Foundation and the Software Preservation Network examined the availability of classic games released in the United States. It found that only 13% were still commercially available, the remaining 87% were out of print. The study described them as critically endangered. Now, games disappear for countless reasons. Music and character licenses expire, publishers collapse, and source code may be lost. Hardware becomes obsolete and digital stores close. We all know this, and if you're my age, you've probably experienced this several times. And sadly, re-releases of beloved franchises are sometimes rejected because somebody at the top decides that restoring the game will not earn them enough money. We all know that discs cannot solve every one of those problems because they can still get damaged, but a physical copy leaves evidence behind. It creates an object that can move beyond its original owner, beyond its original retailer, and sometimes beyond the commercial lifespan of the company that produced the very product. Collectors can retain it, archives can preserve it, and game developers like myself can study it. The point is that second-hand copies can circulate long after an official listing disappears. When the only authorized copy lives behind an account login, preservation begins with permission from the same company that may eventually decide the game is no longer worth supporting. This reaches far beyond nostalgia. Games don't just only create a memorable experience, audience. They document the technology, art, music, and politics, humor, and assumptions of the time in which they were created. A generation that can easily watch films made 50 years ago should not need permission or be subject to legal areas to study a game released in 2004. Now, I understand that Sony deserves a fair hearing. 80% digital sales means physical buyers are already a minority, and I only mean that in a statistical sense. Sony is stating that they are responding to customer behavior rather than forcing an unfamiliar buying method on most of its audience. However, my argument is, how is that saving from no physical copies being passed to the consumer? Game prices are higher than ever, having magically increased over the years since the inception of digital downloads. To me, Sony is yet again attempting to take advantage of the gaming market as others have tried in the past, including themselves. Now, many players dislike clutter, some live far away from game shops, digital libraries are searchable and instantly accessible while the system remains supported. However, the point of the digital option is that it works for the consumer and not against us. Where Sony and all of these greedy corporates miss the plot entirely is that we as gamers love the freedom and flexibility that digital downloads give us. For developers, and especially indie developers like myself, digital distribution removed enormous barriers. Many of the indie games we celebrate today would never have received international physical releases under the old retail model. That makes the situation more complicated than a simple battle between physical and digital purchases. That said, removing the physical option entirely still changes the market for everyone. A minority choice can protect the wider audience. You see, used copies create price pressure, discs preserve delisted games, retailers offer competing places to buy, and collectors keep obscure releases in circulation. And even somebody who buys every game digitally benefits from having an alternative purchase method. Now, Sony has roughly 18 months before the transition begins. That gives you and me as the consumer time to fight back, while also giving the gaming industry time to improve user rights. Credible digital future needs guarantees that last longer than one console generation. Players need a defined commitment and assurances that they'll always be able to re-download purchases even after a storefront closes. Single-player games should receive an offline authentication fallback when platform support eventually ends. Store pages should describe licenses honestly instead of borrowing the language of permanent ownership. Families need a practical route for account inheritance. Publishers and platform holders should deposit preservation-ready versions of their games with qualified archives, under conditions that allow historical access when a title is no longer being sold. Retailers should also retain meaningful competition in digital sales, rather than becoming simple distributors of account-bound access under rules controlled entirely by one platform. When one company controls the hardware, storefront, account, and licenses, consumer protection needs to be at the very forefront. Now, all that said and done, the problem still remains. The purchase of a game no longer leaves us in complete control of the very product we purchased, which is what it should do legally. None of these ideas will recreate the shelf life. They only aim to preserve some of the freedom that shelf represented. Let's imagine the year 2045. Someone wants to play a PlayStation game released in 2029. The game is only 16 years old, and wow, that is a very scary thought if you're my age. But the game is much younger than many titles people still enjoy today. Will it launch because the original account still works, the license server still responds, the publisher still exists, and the current hardware still recognizes the purchase? Or will it survive because the industry planned for the day when those systems would change? That very answer will determine whether this era becomes accessible history or just a collection of trailers, screenshots, and fading memories. As I said earlier, Sony's decision will probably look sensible on a financial slide. Most customers already buy digitally, manufacturing costs disappear, and the PlayStation Store becomes the center of every future release. For players, the calculation reaches further than convenience. A game collection represents your investment, and by the way, old classic titles actually appreciate over time, so that makes this even more tragic if you're a game collector or distributor like myself. It also represents memory and culture, an experience that you shared as a child that you may want to experience as you please or share with someone else. That's easy when the game sits on your shelf. It deserves a future that doesn't depend entirely on an account remaining useful to a company forever. That plastic disc and case may disappear, but the rights attached to buying a game should not disappear with it. But let's be real here, that's the whole goal by Sony, isn't it? And it's not just them, it's the majority of this greedy gaming industry led by selfish, profit-orientated corporates. That's just my analysis on everything that's happening. I personally never want to see physical copies disappear because that's what I grew up on. That very feeling of walking into my local game, HMV or GameStop, and finding a hidden gem of a game to buy was part of the whole gaming experience for me. And it's something I really miss today, holding the actual physical case or box in your hands, admiring the box art, and let's not lie about it, smelling the new manual books inside. And it's one of the reasons I still collect physical copies today. But I want to know where you stand. Out of curiosity, do you still buy physical games or have you completely gone digital? And has Sony's decision changed how you plan to build your collection before 2028 comes around? If you watched all the way to the end of the video, I just want to say a massive thank you. And if you enjoy this type of content, please do continue to support the channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing the video. It really means a ton and helps in the old YouTube algorithm. As always, thanks for watching, drink some coffee, code, and I'll catch you in the next one.